Hello and welcome to the Connection Audit. We are Kirsten and Blake. We are here to take a clear-eyed look at modern relationships, what's changed, what's broken, and what actually helps people connect with respect. We'll explore ethical non-monogamy, or E&M for short, in a balanced and non-judgmental way. We'll look at topics such as consent, boundaries, communication, the fear of rejection, and how to navigate the feelings and the emotional skills most of us were never taught.
And we'll share how the Blossom Society is building a safer, women-are-sovereign space where education comes before access. If you're done with chaos and ready for clarity, you're in the right place.
Welcome to the Connection Audit. Today, we're going to apply our signature framework directly to the very beginning of the digital dating experience. We're going to audit the culture, audit the behavior, and audit the solution around how people communicate in these connection spaces.
Right.
Specifically, we're zooming in on those crucial early direct messages, the DMs. And just to set the tone for our conversation today, we are looking at patterns and cultural myths. We are not attacking individuals.
No, absolutely not.
Our ultimate goal is to offer a practical, compassionate look at how you can build better digital connections without shame.
Yeah, and when we talk about auditing the culture, we really have to start by looking honestly at the reality of the modern inbox. Because right now, the entire landscape of online matching is built on this massive unspoken imbalance.
It really is.
The burden of teaching good behavior, or even just figuring out how to politely let someone down without triggering a volatile reaction that almost entirely falls on single women and couples. It is an extraordinary amount of unpaid emotional labor.
I want to pause on that phrase right there.
Uh-huh.
Unpaid emotional labor. Because it is so central to what we're experiencing. Think about opening an app and feeling a spike of anxiety, not excitement, because you just know you're about to manage 10 different strangers' feelings.
Yeah.
Why does letting someone down in a simple message feel so fraught with danger?
Well, it feels fraught because of a psychological reality known as rejection sensitivity. For a certain subset of people, experiencing a romantic or sexual micro-rejection triggers a really profound neurological response.
Wow.
It can literally feel like physical pain or a deep threat to their ego, and that intense sensitivity is directly linked to stronger, sometimes highly hostile reactions.
Okay, so when someone sends a polite no thank you, and the sender just immediately fires back with insults or anger, that is what's happening under the surface, because the culture often labels those people as inherently monstrous or entirely toxic. But you were saying there's a different way to look at that reaction.
Yes, a much more clear-eyed view identifies this as a hot state reaction. It's what happens when someone with poor emotional regulation collides with a digital environment that has absolutely zero friction.
Right, there are no social breaks.
Exactly. In the real world, if you approach someone at a coffee shop and they decline, social norms and the physical presence of other people act as friction. You walk away.
Okay.
Online, it's an instant, unfiltered reaction to feeling embarrassed or dismissed.
And that brings us to the necessary culture shift we are looking at today. The core philosophy here is women are sovereign, paired with the belief that education precedes engagement. If we want dignity-first spaces, we have to structurally separate a misstandard from malicious behavior.
Yes.
Because a misstandard is just a mistake. Somebody misread the room and they just need a bit of coaching. Malicious behavior, however, requires strict safety enforcement.
That separation is the key to everything. It allows us to stop treating every awkward message like a crime while simultaneously taking the small boundary crossings that make digital spaces feel unsafe incredibly seriously.
Let's apply that separation and move into auditing the behavior. It's easy to talk about bad communication in the abstract, but when we look at the reality of what happens in the inbox, it boils down to 12 distinct, measurable behaviors that ruin early digital connections.
Right.
And emphasize again, these are behavioral mistakes, not identity labels. They are completely teachable. Let's look at the first category, pacing and boundaries. The most common pattern here is being too sexual too soon.
This is a classic escalation mismatch. It entirely misses the necessary paced escalation that builds actual comfort. When someone leads with overly explicit language before any baseline trust is established, they are prioritizing their own instant gratification over the recipient's comfort.
I look at a related pattern in this category, which is pushing for a meet too quickly. Someone might think, I just prefer to see if there's chemistry in person. But how does that actually land for the recipient?
It lands as a complete lack of respect for pacing. You are a stranger on the internet. You cannot rush the trust-building phase simply because you are impatient. The recipient needs time to assess safety and compatibility.
That perfectly explains the third pattern, trying to move off platform too quickly. You see this when someone asks for a phone number or a messaging app handle within the first 3 exchanges. Why the sudden rush to leave the platform?
Often, the sender wants undivided attention or they fear the platform's moderation tools. But for the recipient, the platform provides safety features, the ability to block, report, or easily walk away. Asking them to give up that safety net before you've earned their trust is a major boundary violation.
And rounding out this boundary category is asking for private photos or explicit content right out of the gate. All 4 of these share the same fundamental flaw. They operate from a place of entitlement rather than mutual discovery.
Exactly.
Let's shift to the second category, communication and tone. The classic example that we have all seen is the generic or copy-paste opener. Why do people still use these if they almost never work?
It comes down to a numbers game mentality. It is the illusion of efficiency. But what it actually signals is that you are casting a wide net and haven't paid a second of attention to the human being on the other side of the screen. It instantly kills attraction because it requires 0 effort.
That lack of effort is even more frustrating with the next pattern, not acknowledging the recipient's profile or explicitly stated boundaries. Imagine spending 20 minutes writing a thoughtful profile detailing exactly what kind of dynamic you are looking for, only to receive a message that completely ignores it. It goes beyond annoying.
Yeah.
It feels genuinely disrespectful.
It proves the sender isn't looking for you. They are just looking for anyone. And speaking of tone, being overfamiliar too soon is another major misstep. Using pet names like babe or honey, or trying to force instant intimacy with a total stranger doesn't feel charming. It feels manipulative.
Yes.
It is an attempt to bypass the work of actually getting to know someone.
Which ties right into having an unclear intention. If you reach out, but you aren't upfront about what you are actually seeking, you force the recipient to do the heavy lifting. They have to play detective to figure out your motives, which is incredibly draining.
Completely.
Now let's explore the third category, which deals directly with poor emotional regulation. This is where eagerness crosses the line into making the other person uncomfortable. The big one here is pressure by persistence. We are talking about double messaging, chasing, or sending a solitary question mark when someone hasn't replied fast enough.
This is a classic manifestation of the sender's anxiety. They feel insecure about the silence, so they attempt to force a response. But the system cannot distinguish between, I am just excited and I am pressuring you. The impact on the recipient is the same. It feels demanding and invasive.
And if they do finally reply and politely decline, you often see the guilt-trippy or entitled tone. This is when someone gets defensive, complains about how hard dating is, or tries to argue the standard. If I set a boundary and the response is an argument about why my boundary is unfair, that is a massive red flag, isn't it?
Absolutely. Arguing a boundary shows that the sender believes their desire for access overrides your right to say no. The last pattern in this emotional regulation group is the missing consent check. This happens when someone makes assumptions about what is okay to say, ask, or share. Instead of simply asking, is it okay if we explore this topic, they just bulldoze ahead.
Finally, because we are looking at this through the lens of ethical non-monogamy, there are logistics and safety behaviors specific to E&M spaces. A very common pattern is misreading couple dynamics.
This typically happens when someone messages a couple but ignores one partner entirely, focusing only on the person they find most attractive. Or worse, they try to triangulate, attempting to play the partners off each other. It shows a fundamental misunderstanding of ethical non-monogamy, which requires respecting the existing relationship structure.
And the final of the 12 patterns is dismissing safety logistics. In these communities, requesting public meets for a first date, discussing exit plans, and setting up upfront boundaries are non-negotiable safety steps. If someone acts like you are being paranoid or difficult for wanting to meet at a busy coffee shop first, how should we view that?
It is a fast track to a hard pass. Dismissing safety logistics tells you everything you need to know about how they will handle your boundaries in a real-world scenario.
So, to everyone listening, think about your own experiences for a moment. How many of these 12 patterns have you had to navigate just this week? Probably quite a few. And we want to reiterate, feeling exhausted by, this isn't your fault. You are doing something wrong that invites these messages. This is a systemic failure of the architecture we use to communicate.
Which brings us to auditing this solution. How do we actually build the architecture of respect? This is where the Blossom Society's approach is so revolutionary. They haven't just created a better reporting button, they have built what they call a DM feedback loop. It is an active behavior-shaping system.
I am fascinated by how a system actually steps in to relieve the individual. What does that architecture look like in practice? How does it differentiate between a clumsy opener and someone who is genuinely unsafe?
It creates a strict two-lane system. It completely separates coaching from safety. Let's look at the safety lane first, because this is the non-negotiable bedrock. If a message contains any coercion after a no, any angry or shaming labels, entitlement, privacy breaches like threatening to share screenshots, minimizing sexual health protocols, or couple triangulation that does not get coached, it goes straight to human moderation.
So there is no gentle automated note for unsafe behavior. It is dealt with immediately.
Exactly. The service-level agreements for safety are incredibly strict. They aim to respond to immediate safety risks in under 2 hours and harassment in under 12 hours. Safety requires decisive human intervention.
But then you have the coaching lane. This is for those 12 non-malicious missed standards we just spent time unpacking. If someone receives a message that just misses the mark, say, an overly generic opener, they do not have to sit there and type out a delicate, polite rejection, hoping the person doesn't explode.
Right, they simply tap a button that says, "Not for me." It takes less than 10 seconds. This is the practical application of removing emotional labor. The interface explicitly empowers the recipient, stating, "You don't have to reply. If you want, the system can send a coaching note," and guarantees that the action is anonymous by default. They never have to explain themselves to a stranger again.
So what happens on the other side? If I tap "not for me," what does the sender actually receive? Because the fear is always that a rejection will trigger that hot state anger we talked about earlier.
The sender does not receive a personal rejection from you. Instead, they receive an automated, face-saving note from the platform itself, called the Garden Standard Coaching Note. By making the feedback come from the platform, it strips away the personal humiliation.
I love that. It de-escalates the tension immediately. What does the note actually say to help them improve?
It focuses strictly on the behavior without any mind reading or moralizing. The note breaks down why it didn't land and then offers what works better here. It provides before and after examples and links to micro lessons on the platform, like a quick 60-second refresher on consent and pacing. It essentially turns a rejection into a roadmap for success.
Wait, let's talk about protective friction again, because this is brilliant. If they receive this note telling them they messed up, what stops them from immediately typing out an angry response to the platform or the person?
The moment the sender opens that coaching note, the system triggers a 120-minute reply lock on the thread.
2 hours where they physically cannot send a follow-up message. That cooldown period is everything. It forces the hot state reaction to dissipate before any damage can be done.
Furthermore, there's a hard 24-hour boundary where the sender cannot recontact the recipient at all, and the screen displays explicit, plain boundary lines. You can't contact the member about this feedback. It leaves absolutely no room for debate or negotiation.
And I imagine it doesn't stop at just one interaction. If someone is continuously sending copy-paste openers or asking for private photos, how does the system hold them accountable over time?
There is a compassionate but firm escalation ladder. If someone gets 1 or 2 coaching notes in a 14-day window, it is treated as guidance. We are all human. We all misread a room sometimes. But if they receive 3 notes in 14 days, the system recognizes a pattern. It triggers rate limiting on their account, slowing down how many people they can contact, and initiates a reflection unlock.
What is a reflection unlock?
It is a quick 20 to 40-second micro-quiz where they have to actively choose a better opener or identify the standard they missed in a hypothetical scenario before they are allowed to continue messaging. It forces them to engage with the educational material.
And if they still don't change their behavior, say they hit 5 coaching notes in a month,
Then the system requires them to complete a mandatory refresher module before they can message anyone else on the platform. It is accountability woven directly into the user experience. It proves that you can hold a highly rigorous standard for connection without treating people as disposable. You just have to build the right architecture.
it makes you wonder about the broader implications of this kind of architecture. What if this concept, separating safety from coaching, applying protective friction, and standardizing feedback was applied to professional networking sites, or even massive public forums? Imagine a world where digital platforms treated poor communication not as a viral engagement metric to be exploited for ad revenue, but as a temporary coachable moment with a forced 2-hour cooldown. We might actually cure a massive portion of the internet's rage problem simply by designing systems that require us to take a breath.
That is a fascinating lens to look through. As we wrap up our audit for today, let's distill all of this down to our 3 key takeaways. Number 1, behavior is separate from identity. We can and absolutely should critique and correct bad messaging patterns like forced intimacy or boundary pushing without labeling the person as entirely toxic. It is about maintaining high standards, not shaming individuals.
Number 2, emotional labor belongs to the system, not the individual. The principle that women are sovereign means we need to demand platforms that build tools allowing people to enforce their boundaries in 10 seconds flat without ever having to act as a free therapist, a dating coach, or a human shield.
And number 3, protective friction works. Adding slight delays, timeouts, and required reflection after a rejection effectively neutralizes that hot state anger. It creates a calmer, significantly safer environment for everyone involved.
Thanks for listening to The Connection Audit, where we hopefully help you with the skills, standards, and the courage to be honest. And our only ask is if you know one person who you feel would benefit from our conversation, please mention The Connection Audit and point them in our direction.
Until next time, less scrolling, more soul.